Hi, my name is Christopher Height, and I write the blog Tom Paine's Ghost. I'm making this video today to read to you the response, or part of the response, that Mitt Romney made to a question that was asked of him by a group called ScienceDebate.org. Now, if you're wondering about the legitimacy of ScienceDebate.org, it's a group of groups, including the American Association for the Advancement of Science, the American Chemical Society, the National Academy of Sciences, the American Association of Geosciences, and many others. Their media partner is Scientific American, and what they have done year after year is compiled and distilled some of the most important science-based questions for potential presidential nominees. So this year, President Barack Obama and Mitt Romney agreed to respond, but only in print. So I think it's important to make video responses to their responses just to get wider exposure. So I think the most important question asked, in my opinion, was their opinion on climate change. The group Science Debate asked, regarding climate change, the Earth's climate is changing, and there is concern about the potentially adverse effects of these changes on life on planet Earth. What is your position on cap and trade, carbon taxes, and other policies proposed to address global climate change, and what steps can we take to improve our ability to tackle challenges like climate change that cross national boundaries? Now, Mitt Romney admitted in the very first part of his response that he accepts that the science behind global climate change, that he accepts that the global temperature is increasing and that human activity contributes to that. He accepts that. However, he says that the government has no role in addressing this. And the reasons that he gives I find insufficient. And here is where I disagree with his assessment of what should be done about climate change. He says the reality is that the problem is called global warming, not America warming. China long ago passed America as the leading emitter of greenhouse gases. Developed world emissions have leveled off while developing world emissions continue to grow rapidly, and developing nations have no interest in accepting economic constraints to change that dynamic. Now, I think that's a fundamental misrepresentation of the facts. It is true that China exceeds the United States in CO2 emissions. China produces, now this is an estimate, but 7.03 billion metric tons of CO2 annually, whereas the United States produces 5.4 billion metric tons of CO2 annually. But let's be honest with the math here. If the Republican Party is the party of personal responsibility, then the metric that we should report when we're considering CO2 emission is CO2 emission per person, per capita CO2 emission. So if we take the number of metric tons of CO2 and divide it by the population of each respective country, so in the case of the United States, 5.4 billion metric tons of CO2 divided by the population of the United States, which is 311 million, and in China we take 7 billion metric tons of CO2 and divide it by the Chinese population, which is 1.347 billion, you get, in China, the answer is 5.2 metric tons per person per year. In the United States, the answer is 17.5 metric tons per person per year. So the United States, on a per person basis, exceeds China by a factor of 3. By a factor of 3 in the amount of CO2 emitted per person per year. So as the party of personal responsibility goes, as U.S. citizens, we are not being personally responsible for our impact on global climate change. And Mitt Romney is fundamentally distorting the facts to favor his argument by pawning off the responsibility on the rest of the world. The fact is, the United States Republican Party is the only group of people in the world that vastly denies climate change. And that radical position is obstructing any course of action that the U.S. could lead to have a positive effect on it, and it frustrates me to no end. Again, my name is Christopher Height, and I write the blog Tom Paine's Ghost, and I hope to see you there, and I hope to see your thoughts and comments underneath this YouTube video. Thank you very much, and have a good night.